This piece of leather has most certainly been re-glued at some stage in the past, which I suppose should come as no surprise, but that will probably explain the lumps and bumps. It's very likely we've got two lots of glue there, and one layer was probably never particularly well scraped off the body before another layer was put on. Probably put a little bit too much. No, that's about right. Sometimes it's hard to judge exactly how much glue to put on. I think that'll be good. Leather and leatherette typically shrinks with age, and it doesn't want to go around a raised boss like this tripod bush. Press that down firmly. There's a few little marks here. Green verdigris that's from around where the depth of field scale will sit. We'll just wipe that off the leather. And that can go back on now, the scale ring of course. This little piece, we have the wavy washer. It provides a little bit of controlled friction so that the knob doesn't just rattle about. A knob, and let's just put a wipe of synthetic grease on here. Here's the scale thing. Let's get that located into position. 2 screws. Get one started. Get the other one started. Check that everything revolves smoothly. Do those 2 screws up tight. There we have it. So the body's back together. Opens and closes. Focus is good now. I've got that all adjusted correctly. Viewfinder's nice and clean. Film Advance works correctly, even the rewind. So this camera really just needs me to deal to that shutter and lens assembly now, and it'll be done. Let's hope that this part goes a bit smoother than the camera body did. Oh, that rear lens group is loose. It's supposed to be finger tight, but that wasn't really finger tight. The front one is loose. Again, not really as tight as it should have been. And the body of the, let's have a look at this shutter. What's it run like at a 10th? Oh, a bit slow. What's it like at a second? Well, we haven't got that much time available. So we'll assume that that is running very, very slow, I think. Just take the screws out of that nameplate. Try not to lose those, they're very small. And I need a special screwdriver to deal with this snake eye screw right there. Also known as a pig nose screw apparently. It's rotate that. It's actually a rivet, it's not a screw. And then I can rotate the front plate there to disconnect it from the bayonet, and we're in. Unhook the spring from the main lever, lift the main lever out. Screw out from here, just holding down the shutter release so I can get it to screw in this little block, which is the cable release socket for all practical purposes. I can lift the spring out here, which is sitting in a channel in the body of the shutter. That's better. I can lift that arm out. This is our 500th of a second or high speed spring. This lever would operate as the return spring for our shutter release. It would also operate a cable release from there, or in the case of these particular cameras, they had a little plunger for a shutter release. I'll just lift the shutter release button off here. You'll be very careful with this very fine spring that we don't lose it. This little catch here holds the shutter in the cocked position and is lifted out by the shutter release and allowing the main lever to rotate. This lever here is the B lever. It drops down into position to prevent the blade actuating ring from returning from the rest position. And this is another component of that B lever and T lever setup. This little one here shifts things along, shifts things across. When you use the B setting, that's exactly what moves. That moves it, and that other little lever drops down to hold it in place. You can see a bit of filth in here. That doesn't look like grease. I don't know what that mess is. Nothing nice. At the back of the shutter, 3 case screws here. That one was loose. That's tight. We can lift the shutter case off. Now our shutter's split in half. This is the shutter case. It has the diaphragm blades in it. This is very, very reluctant to move. Have it apart. 3 screws hold the retainer plate in place. The retainer plate holds all of the components in here. Taking apart the diaphragm is not a popular subject for some people, so that they often don't actually do it. Right, here's the control lever for the aperture settings, and this is the rotating ring from inside which swings those diaphragm blades inwards or outwards. This is quite sticky. There's probably dried grease and so forth at the back of this. Here, there's probably been quite a bit of friction there because that's rubbed right through the nickel plating to the brass, so it's a fair indication that there's a fair bit of friction there and that it's done a lot of hard work. Those components will all need to be cleaned. Let's have a look at the mechanism plate itself. We've got 5 blades. I'm looking at the order of these have been put in. Yeah, that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, they've been put in the correct order. The blades, what state are they in? A little bit dirty. There's no obvious signs of serious corrosion there. A little bit of oil on them, a bit of oil staining. Flip this over. The lever here operates the blade actuating ring. catches on there's a projection on the ring that comes through to this side, so we'll remove this lever, single screw at the top here. First I'd unhook that return spring for this. On the underside, 3 screws hold the retaining ring in place. This is quite an early shutter. Later shutters, the retaining ring is quite a different assembly. 3 screws, are they all the same size? They are. It's always worth checking to make sure that the screws are the same size as you take them out. If you find one that's long, you're going to have to remember where it goes, or you're going to have to mark something so that you can put it back in the right place. Here's the mechanism plate stripped down. Typically I do not remove retard gear trains. Now holding the pallets back here, this thing should have popped back to the rest position. You see that it's very reluctant. That's just clogged up with filth. I'll give you a quick demo of how it should work. I'll just run a little bit of naphtha in there. Work that backwards and forwards a few times. Flush a bit more through there. Blow all of that out. Now it should be nice and prompt. It should be like this. That's what they're like when they're clean. Before it was this really sort of sluggish sort of movement back to the rest position. That's why the speeds were so bad in this shutter. Typically I don't disturb these. I don't take them off to clean them, because to adjust the speeds you need to move in or out either end of this speed train. One end controls the position of the pallets, how much the lever lifts the pallets out of engagement with the pallet wheel, and the other end controls how much engagement you get with this lever here, with the main lever of the shutter. Now getting the balance of those right, it's a pain. You know, I just hate it. You know, I can certainly do it, but I'd rather not. So rather than take the retard gear train off and clean it separately, I leave it in place, clean it in place on the mechanism plate. And 99 times out of 100, that served me very well. Every now and then you'll get a speed train, a retard gear train, that's got some serious issue. That something's bent, or it's got a damaged tooth, or there's something lodged in there, and you're going to have to remove it to replace it, to fix it, or just to put it into the ultrasonic cleaner for an extended period to blow any incrustations away. But I don't do it lightly. I'm cleaning around the top surface of the mechanism plate here now, and there's all old grease, probably various generations of grease. I can see 2 different varieties in there. Typically speaking, you'll find graphite grease in a place like that, but you might find anything else that was vaguely greasy looking that came to hand when someone was servicing the camera. Yeah, there's some crusty crap in here which I want to get rid of. If it's grease, it's certainly not the same grease as was used elsewhere. Now, round by the speed train, there's a hairspring here on the retard gear train, and when this lever's pulled all the way across, the hairspring's wound up out of the way, and then I release the pallets and it locks, it stays in that position, stays closed. And that's when I clean round the housing here with a cotton bud and some naphtha. I go in that direction, and as I get to this end I hit the pallet lever and the wheel drops back into position. But it means that I can avoid the damage, any damage to that little hairspring while I'm cleaning the centre of the mechanism plate here. This piece in the centre is called the lens tube, because the lens typically screws directly into it, or at least extends into it. So I'm just wiping all these surfaces once more. One of the reasons it's important to get rid of old grease and so forth from these is that the grease will have dried out and gone sticky. It will impede the action of the shutter, it won't help it. And just bunging fresh grease on over the top is not an approved service technique. That's good. I'm going to flush that retard gear train again because I want to make sure that that gets really clean. So basically I'm just filling that up with a bit of naphtha, which will wash away grease and rubbish. Then blow it out. And when you blow it out, you're blowing away the naphtha. You're also blowing away anything that it has absorbed, any grease or oil or something of that nature. You're blowing it away. If you just soak something in naphtha and then let it evaporate away, you're left with whatever it had taken up to start off with is going to be left behind after the naphtha's evaporated. So it would be entirely useless. So the retaining plate here has got a little locating lug, which means it'll only fit into one position, or should only fit into one position. So I'm just cleaning this carefully. It looks pretty good. I'm not seeing any great problem with this, and it doesn't look particularly oily, I have to say, either. So it means that most likely the problems we had with the shutter speed being exceptionally sluggish and not even wanting to run at the 1 second speed is almost certainly, in the main, you could put that down to the fact that the retard gear train was effectively just clogged up with dust, dirt and dried lubricant. And that if that had been the only change we'd made, chances are the shutter would have worked comparatively well. So I'm wiping the blade actuating ring here. Looking at it, there's a bit of surface corrosion here. It's pretty light, and I don't think that's going to cause us any issues. Can't expect a camera that's 85 years old to get off completely scot-free, can you? Right, blade actuating ring can go back in. This lever here that swings the blade actuating ring across to do the B and T speeds, you've got to make sure you end up with that on the right side of that operating stud. Otherwise things don't go well. Let's get this swung into position. That must go there. And 3 small screws. Get the screws started, get them all in position, and once they're all in position then you can tighten them up. Don't just put one screw in and tighten it up and then move to the next. It's not a winning method. You're all in position, go back and tighten them. Check the action of the blade actuating ring, that moves freely. There's our lever and its screw. Don't neglect cleaning these, because if there's a lot of dirt or dried grease on the bottom of that lever, it will not swing freely, and if it doesn't swing freely, well, the blade actuating ring cannot rotate freely from one extremity of action to the other. Lubricant.